So it started off with Tim creating all the player archetypes of how we wanted to be able to let players play through the game. The basic ones were like ranged combat, melee combat, and those were just under combat. And then we had like a dialogue character and a stealth character. And those were our starting archetypes. And then we broke it down to individual smaller archetypes like, hey, I want to be a sniper. I want to be a stealth assassin. We had those, and it was a matter of figuring out, well, how do we allow those play styles and what sort of systems and enemies and mechanics do we need to support that?
Is that a difficult thing to do, to try and make each one of those interesting while also having, because you can't change all of the enemies, for instance?
Yeah, it's hard. Making RPGs is hard.
Hello and welcome to the final video in our series delving into the design of the Outer Worlds. In our previous sessions we explored how this relatively small development team dealt with scope control, how they wrote the various characters you meet across the solar system, how they designed each world and the quests you take part in, and the role of sound design and music in an open world role-playing game. Truth be told, there is no shortage of areas of design we could tackle when talking about a game like this. Open world RPGs are dense with mechanical complexity, not only the complexity of the world you explore, but the ways in which the game will allow you to explore it. You see, games like the Outer Worlds can be played in many different ways. Some players like combat, others prefer stealth. Some like to talk their ways out of situations, others like to hack or steal. The Outer Worlds is laboured with the responsibility of facilitating all of these playstyles, and players expected to do all of these things well. The game has to be a competent shooter, a fun stealth experience, have good writing, characters, interesting enemies, and so much more. We don't have time to cover every single way you can play this game, but in this video we're going to explore some of the creative challenges and decisions that were made in service of this mission. Later we're going to dive into combat, but first we wanted to chat about the various ways players tend to play, the novel idea Obsidian had to focus on hybrid characters, and Tim's fascination with a new role, the role of the leader.
Originally said there were going to be 4 base roles, which was stealth, combat, dialogue, and leadership. But then I realized that leadership is more of a hybridization on the other one. So you can have like a dialogue leader hybrid. You could have a combat leader hybrid and stealth leader hybrid that are all different. But then I wanted the 3 base ones to hybridize with each other. So the stealth combat was your sniper. Dialogue combat was somebody who had those skills that would make combat, the dialogue skills would make combat a little easier for them. And then the stealth dialogue was the holographic shroud and the disguise.
We struggled with the leadership stuff for quite a while.
Yeah.
And trying to make sure that how can a person who's either focusing on leadership or focusing on dialogue, how can those actually work in combat, and how can you have an interesting character that way?
I think we ended up with a really cool thing with leader, making your companions better and making them better at sharing their skills with you. So that you're still the one picking the lock, but if you're a very good leader and you have someone with you who knows how to pick locks, you can pick better locks. I love when you have a dialogue line and it pops up the little companion icon, meaning you're only saying this because you have a companion. Now that was one thing I wanted to do, where I wanted them to show them whispering to you. Like before you said anything, it would cut to you and you'd see like Ellie go. And we tried to do that, but they were having trouble getting all the companion animations for all the different companion types working for the player. And also, I don't think the player's loaded during dialogue.
Yeah, we don't have.
We ran into issues.
Floating arms.
But I love that idea that they're actually telling you what to say, like, and then you have a line, and you click it, and you're saying this lie, but it's obviously something Ellie just told you. And I thought that was cute, and also reinforced that these companions helped you get through certain dialogues, even if they weren't interjecting.
The leadership playstyle actually had to be rebalanced at the very end, because at one point you could just put all your points into leadership and not have to shoot anything, and your companions just murder everything in front of you.
But I also love if you don't put any points in leadership, you don't get their special attack. Mm-hmm. So you have to at least put a few points in, and then they all have really cool special attacks, which were fun to put in and gives them a lot of fun character.
Well, in the original design, it was the player was doing these abilities, and then as we changed TTD over to the more of the bullet time and allowing that sort of stuff, we took special player moves out of there and we pushed them onto companions to give them a little bit more personality and to have bigger moments in combat.
I was looking forward to doing some shooting anyway.
By thinking of these hybrid roles, it forced the team to come up with new mechanics that benefited certain combinations of playstyles. As somebody who tends to focus on stealth and dialogue, I was particularly interested in one novel addition to the game.
Early on in the game, I started thinking there should be hybrid characters. Like a stealth combat guy is a sniper, but for stealth and dialogue, I wasn't sure what there was to do. And so we thought of the idea of the disguise system is, your stealth skill helps you wear the disguise longer, but then when you get caught, you talk your way out of it. And it just worked really well for our game because we had so many zones that we knew we would set up as restricted, either because it's where constables were, or it was a R&D development zone for a company. But we'd know the player would want to get in there, and so we came up with holographic shroud. Because I know when you ask about it, and the guy starts explaining like, well, it generates a hologram complete with odors.
I think Chris wrote the first pass of that,
and your character could say,
polished it.
Why can't I just grab a lab coat? And he's like, no one's gonna believe something as stupid as that. And it's like, well, how does a hologram generate odors? And he's like, science.
I see you have activated your holographic shroud, Captain. Excellent. Becoming indistinguishable from an authentic UDL trooper will prove advantageous to your current situation.
So from then you're just like, okay, holographic shroud. And it lets you go into all these different places, and it's just, the main thing was, it's fun. And I used to push that on people and just go, I know we can question this or figure out how to work it in, but it's fun. And if you make a character who puts all his points in stealth and dialogue, here's something really fun for them to do. The writers were great since they knew where you were and what you were pretending to be. They could make these great speech checks for like, oh, I'm new here. I didn't check in at the front desk, or I'm just trying to find the bathroom.
Yeah, there was no story needing to be delivered or plot points needing to be delivered at those points, so they could just go wild.
We're about to dive into shooty stuff for a bit, so before we did that, I wanted to know if they'd ever considered a pacifist playthrough, a way to play the game without killing anyone. Basically, did they ever think about putting in a non-lethal weapon or a way to knock people out instead of murdering them?
We experimented with it, but we got rid of it because it was causing a lot of confusion both on what it meant to knock out a robot and also, hey, I knocked all these people out, then I went in this building, when I came out, they're all standing back up.
Oh no.
So if the building was instanced, when you came back out, they'd be standing up. If it wasn't instanced, they wouldn't be. But people didn't notice the difference, and it got very confusing, and people were like, I don't know how long people are staying unconscious, I'm confused, I don't know what this means. And also, if you were told to kill someone, and you knocked them unconscious instead, and then you'd run back to turn in the quest, and you hadn't killed them. Or we had a quest where you're supposed to bring in their fingers.
Oh yeah, and then you'd make them unconscious and then take their fingers.
And take their finger, and then you're like, well, first of all, you'd see them later, and I'm like, hey, they have all their fingers. But also, it's like, did I just pull a finger off someone while they were asleep?
In a way, that feels worse than killing them.
It does. It's kind of like we were talking earlier where you killed a named Sissy Pig and you didn't have to. You just kind of feel a little like a bad person.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Tim. In a later level, I accidentally, on purpose, killed one of Phineas's pet pigs because I thought maybe there was a quest object inside of it. My bad. But as it turns out, it is time to talk about murder. Combat is tricky in these types of games, and many an open-world role-playing game has fallen short of the expectations of players, especially first-person ones with guns. Unlike a shooter, in which a large part of the development time is spent designing how the shooting feels, combat in an RPG is just one head of a large creative hydra. On top of that, each player comes at combat differently. Everyone who plays Call of Duty wants to shoot stuff, but in an RPG, some want that to be ranged, others stealth, and some just don't want to shoot at all. So how in the world do you design a game that facilitates all of these needs and somehow satisfies each of them too? Is it even possible? Perhaps not, but we talked to the team about how they tackle this creative challenge.
I always viewed it all as a pacing thing. It's you want some combat, but you don't want too much, and you want dialogue, but you don't want too much. Because like the first time we made Groundbreaker, it was all dialogue. It was like an hour and a half of dialogue, and I was like, we got to break that up because a roller coaster is more fun than a monorail. That's how I treat it. I treat combat as a pacing mechanism, but we also understand there are some people who don't want combat at all, and they just play the game for the story, and then there's other people
who just want to shoot everything in the game.
Combat is the reason they play the game. And you want to make it fun for all those people, but that means the encounters have to vary quite a bit. Usually we try to mix melee attackers and ranged attackers so you can get them spread out, have them do different things.
Yeah, make sure all of our environments support cover, different ways for the player to approach it as well. So if there's enough things that the player can hide behind and get close to people without getting seen. Yeah, we had a lot of rules and standards for our encounter spaces, and then for our encounter groups, we put everything into families, and then we'd design each of the creatures in the family to sort of work together and have a specific role in the family, so that when we developed a specific encounter, it'd be taking those pieces, and based off of the types of units in there and the number of units, ideally that would change how players would approach that combat encounter.
And then we know for sure we wanted melee and ranged combat, and we wanted them to be about equal in power, but we wanted them to feel very differently in the game. We wanted it to be something that was approachable by both casual players and also hardcore players, but also anyone who had played previous games that we were marking as touchstones.
When the game looks like a certain way with a first-person perspective and there's gunplay, we learned this at past Obsidian games, like if it looks a certain way, it should probably match expectations. So we wanted to make sure that the gunplay felt pretty good, so that was a big priority for us early on, to make sure that the core mechanics of gameplay and combat didn't sort of fight with the RPG elements of it. So because we had gunplay, the gunplay needed to be good, not just because of the RPG components on top of it. Having the different types of guns in there so that people can pick something that matches their play style. Some people like to use assault rifles, they like to spray and pray. Other people like to take their time, line up faraway shots with a sniper rifle, or going in guns blazing with a handgun or a revolver, are all different types of play style, even just within the shooter type of game. And that was the other thing. We wanted to make sure that you never felt punished for using the thing that you liked using. So that's where we wanted to do a lot of things that allowed you to either modify your gear or customize it so you could continue using the thing that you liked.
Also, TTD was put in so that if you're overwhelmed, slow everything down. And as long as you don't move, you can keep it slowed and you can just look around and take stock of what's happening. So I think those two things right there helped a lot of casual players not be overwhelmed.
We actually iterated on it quite a bit, and it didn't start out where it currently was. It was more of a lock-on, pick an enemy, pick a location on the enemy, and apply a status effect. But we felt that slowed down the pace of the game too much. So we wanted to try keeping the game moving, and that's sort of where we, instead of locking you onto a character, we just, hey, slow down the world, and still have it be skill-based of you still have to aim at a character. So a lot of the stuff that we added in there was like shooting people in the legs, you could slow them down, shooting people in the arms, maimed them and reduced their damage by half, shooting people in the head, blinded them, shooting in the groin, weakened them to other damage types, getting interesting status effect reactions based off of the location that you hit them.
You really like the location hitting.
Yes.
I believe you had a phrase for it.
Yes.
Tell us your phrase now.
Well, it started off because in the original prototype of the game, we were trying to highlight that it was interesting. So one of the first locations that we put in that you could hit, especially on a human, was the groin. So we called it nuts and butts because we wanted to let you shoot the front and the back.
Yep.
And we had specialized hit reactions for both of those. My biggest disappointment is that not everything in the game has nuts and butts.
That's his biggest disappointment. Please quote him on that. The mandibular rearranger started because we were playing with face bones and extending them past the artist recommended limits. And I thought it was hilarious, and the artists were like, I don't want people's faces to look like that. So we're like, well, why don't we make one weapon in the game that can go past the limits? The gloop gun, we just thought it was fun to turn gravity off on things and see what happened. So the idea grew from there. It's like, hey, why don't we make a character who has a lot of science skills? Every weapon worked in a certain very base way and did damage, but then it had a cool side effect, mind control, shrinking, and that got a lot better the higher science you were, which meant you could make a combat character that was primarily a scientist if you carried enough of those weapons around.
But the genesis of all of it was we will always want our, no matter how pulpy sci-fi and unrealistic our science or physics are in our worlds, we kind of want it to have a surface logic to it. So we had a bunch of rules about here's how science works, here's what doesn't happen, there's no subatomic particles, here's what that means. So we laid all these rules out, and then Tim was like, I want science weapons, and science weapons don't have to pay attention to anything. They could be this wacky, they don't have to make any sense. We'll come up with an explanation for them afterwards.
Go. Yeah, and so it was fun. I mean, like I said, some started as bugs, some were just ideas people had, and like, I'd really like to see a weapon like this. So there was the weapon, there was a hammer that did all the damage types at once, and then there's a log somewhere you can read they never manufactured it because the prototype was so expensive. Nobody could ever afford to buy this thing. And it was just, it had combined everything we liked in our game. It was fun, it was a little silly, it was rewarding. Getting some of those were incredibly rewarding.
Thanks so much for watching our series on the design of the Outer Worlds. We hoped it helped shine a light on the complexity of making open world role-playing games, and how impressive it is that a team of fewer than 75 people managed to release a game of this scope. A special thanks to all of our patrons for helping us fund this work. We'll have a 6th video with some fun bonus materials exclusively for them very soon. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for watching and supporting our channel. See you again soon.